We've been on this journey for now the past months, right? Where we've been discussing and looking at the strongholds of the enemy. And there was one stronghold that we didn't touch on, and it actually was not part of my original research. I don't know why it wasn't. It just wasn't. And that's the stronghold of shame. And I'm asking the Lord, okay, so how do you want to do this? And I don't know where this happened, but somewhere along the line, I came across, oh, did you pinch him? Never. Somewhere along the line, I ran across a video by a woman named Brene Brown. Yeah, Brene Brown's amazing. She's a research professor in Texas, University of Houston. Social work is the focus of her research. And she's done a number of videos for the TED Talks, okay? So this particular one is called Listening to Shame, and it's a follow-up to one that she had done a few years earlier. Her research into shame, her research into what, why we deal with it, how we deal with it, and how it is a problem was fascinating to me. And so we're actually going to watch her TED Talk. It's about 20 minutes long. And we're going to do that, and then we'll talk about some of the things that she said, because I just find it fascinating that here's this woman who doesn't really know God yet. She's like right on the outskirts of knowing the Lord, right? But that God has given her such insight and wisdom in this area that I think we can all benefit from. And I think you'll be surprised when you hear what she discovered is one of the major antidotes to shame in our lives. I know I was, okay? I have to warn you, she does use in 2 occasions adult language, nothing really, really bad, okay? But it's not something you would typically hear here at Heaven's Invasion, so I figure I better put that disclaimer out there. Actually, one of the words you would find in the King James Version, so I'll let you ponder that for a minute, all right? But pretty interesting stuff, huh? One of the deepest values that we have here is the value of family. We have, from the beginning, striven to create this environment where we all feel loved and accepted and honored and celebrated. That's the heartbeat that we hopefully are carrying. I get comments from people so many times who come to Heaven's Invasion and they say, I felt the love of God. I felt the love of God when I was there. And I said, yeah, well, that's what we've been trying to see happen. And so when the Lord began to speak to me about talking about shame, as a stronghold that the enemy keeps us in, I had no idea that he was going to take me in this direction of talking about it from Brene's research, where she found that shame is a product of isolation. I don't know if you caught that, but shame is absolutely amplified when we stay isolated, because it's a product of what's going on in your mind about how you see yourself. And I mean, I wrote so many notes of this. She starts out by saying vulnerability is essential to wholehearted living. I mean, that's powerful. To wholehearted living. If I'm going to live to the fullest, right? If we're going to live to the fullness, there has to be this willingness to be vulnerable with each other, to be open and honest and transparent, to be authentic. All these great, psychological words that we don't, but they're necessary. Okay? Vulnerability is a choice to open yourself to the possibility of being physically or emotionally wounded or hurt. That's the chance I take when I open myself up to people. And I know that many of you have experienced that. And that's the reason why many of you are here. because you've been in church environments where you tried to be real and you got shot down. You tried to open up and be yourself, and you couldn't do that there because they wanted this, and you're over here being led. Well, you see what I'm saying? It's like you didn't fit the mold. And so we all experience this kind of thing where, yeah, it's risky being real because of what we've been through. Okay? I love what she said. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is courage in action. Okay? It's the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. And then she swings into this whole thing of shame as the swampland of the soul. Wow, what a great way to describe it. And she, that Theodore Roosevelt quote was awesome too. I'm not going to go through that. I went and found it and printed the whole thing out because it's a whole paragraph about the one in the arena. It's not the critic that counts, it's the person that gets in the arena and actually tries something, even if you fail, right? She mentions the two failure tapes that we have over and over in our minds. You're not good enough, right? You're not good enough. Something wrong with you. What's wrong with you, right? And the second one is, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are that you could do X, Y, or Z that you try? You understand that, right? This is what we deal with in our minds. And so the greatest critic that we all deal with is ourselves, right? We're constantly facing those negative thoughts that come against us and try to stop us from actually being who we were created to be, okay? I love how she broke down the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is I did something wrong or bad. Shame is there's something wrong with me. I am something wrong. I am bad, okay? And so we identify who we are by what we do. I am what I do, in other words. That's the error of that line of thought. That if I have made a huge mistake in my life, that means I am messed up, that I am a mistake, that there's something wrong with me because I did that. No, I made a mistake. Is that clear, right? The difference there. So, and the gender differences, oh my gosh. I had never even considered that before. How, women have this impossible picture of what they should look like, what they should be like, and you're constantly comparing yourself with that picture and realizing how far short you fall in that. And again, if you guys have worked through that, God bless you, that's awesome. But to realize that this is still an ongoing issue for so many, right? And then for us guys to be exposed the way she did was powerful. Because I know what that feels like as a man, to realize that I'm not free to share my fear, my weakness, because it is scary for my wife to see me like that. And I get that. I didn't realize that until she brought that out, right? She made a comment about a man that can sit with a woman who's reached the end of her rope and for him not to list all the things that he's done, right? Dogs, that's maturity, okay? When we're able to sit with each other and basically listen with no judgment, right? Just listen. Be there to listen. That's tremendous maturity, right? She says, shame grows in an environment of secrecy, silence, and judgment. That's what I meant, when I said earlier that the environment of isolation provides the fertilizer, basically, for shame. Secrecy, silence, and judgment. Empathy, on the other hand, she mentions, is one of the antidotes to shame. To be able to share honestly, and if you're the one listening, to say, yeah, I've been there too. I get that. I've experienced that as well. I feel you, you know. That's what she's saying. Now we know as children of God that the most transformational antidote to shame is what? Somebody tell me. What's the most transformational thing for us to get us out of shame? Anybody know? Well, acceptance is part of it. Yeah, identity. It's knowing what Papa says about us, because that never changes. See, my circumstances may change, my behavior may change, I may do something, that's not good, but it doesn't change who I am at my core based on what he says about me, right? So she doesn't have that yet, but we do. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that that's where we're coming from. I wrote this quote down as well. We'll never be bulletproof or perfect enough, but we can be real and vulnerable together as we dare greatly to become all we were created to be and do. Okay? I kind of put that together based on what she was saying. So, what does that look like? Well, all I can do is tell you my story, right? And the struggle that I underwent for so many years in my life and still have to battle on occasion. In the late 80s, the Lord led me to start a business. It was an audio production company. I wasn't into video back then, it was all audio. And he gave me this idea, this really creative idea, to serve movie cinemas by producing a professionally sounding phone message. Because back then, if you wanted to know what was playing at the movies, you would actually call the movie and there would be this voicemail, it was a answering machine, right? And you would hear, playing, Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and it was horrible. These tapes were horrible. I heard one, I called a bunch of the cinemas in the area just to kind of see what they were doing. And I actually, on one of them, I heard the toilet flush in the background while the guy was making a tape. Okay? So I'm like, wow, there's definitely a need here for this service, a professionally produced thing. So I did some demos and called up movie cinemas in the area, blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't find success until I connected with a chain of movie cinemas called National Amusements that had over 100 multiplex cinemas all across the country. And they started me on a pilot program with a couple of cinemas in New England. And from there, it grew until I was serving over 100 multiplex movie cinemas all over the country, producing a program every week for those cinemas. Okay? This was a 6-figure business that I was running. But you know what the problem was? I was so naive when it came to business things that I didn't do things that I should have done to keep my connection with that company strong. And so eventually somebody came in and underbid me, and I lost that company. I lost that client. They were 90% of my business, that one client. Okay? Needless to say, we almost went bankrupt. But in the midst of all of that, God was faithful. He provided. He showed me some other areas that I could do things in that would help. Okay? But nothing ever came about that was anywhere near what I had when I was working that particular business. Okay? My wife, God bless her, stepped up to the plate and went back to work to help us make ends meet. And so for the next, let me get this right, I would have to say for almost 20 years, I lived in a world where I felt like there was something wrong with me because I couldn't get back into a business situation where which is my original goal. I said, God, I want a business that's going to allow us to be free to do what you want, knowing that all of our bills are paid, everything works out, right? So for those 20 years, I'm living in a world where there's something wrong with me because I was failing at what I thought was the goal that God had for my life, which was to run a business that would take care of all of our needs. Now, in the meantime, I got involved in ministry. I had been involved in ministry almost my whole life in some leadership capacity. So ministry was nothing new for me. I went and taught at a Christian school. I had positions in these schools. I was on staff, for churches and different things. I was all involved. But you know what? I wasn't doing what I thought I was supposed to do, which was to have a business that would take care of our family. And so I'm living in this world where what's wrong with me, God? What's wrong with me that I can't start a business and I even went back into that arena and started working for Christian bookstores. I created an on-hold advertising program that was at its height in over 150 Christian bookstores all across the country. Every month I'd produce a fresh program that would go out to these stores. They were they were, I should say, a retail association by the name of the Parable Group. I got connected with them. I also got connected with the Months Group. And so I began to do certain things to try to recover that. It never got to the point where it did what I had previously. And now, Christian bookstores are almost non-existent because they have been put out of business by big department stores like Walmart that carry Christian books, by Amazon.com and other online sources, okay? So from over 150 stores, you know how many I have right now? Maybe a dozen that I still serve. So I have struggled throughout my life with an area of shame because I couldn't provide as a man like I knew I should or the way I wanted to. And I just have to say, I honor and I bless my wife because she has so faithfully done her part. I'm going to tell you this, without her sacrifice of going to work every day, I don't think I'd be standing before you right now. I don't think that any of the ministry stuff that we're doing, the lives that we've been able to touch and change by God's grace, none of that I don't think would be happening if she hadn't been willing. Because I have to say, because of her belief in me. And it's only been over the past, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, that God has finally healed that wound in me. To where I felt, and she'll tell you, you can ask her, I would oftentimes, especially on days when she didn't want to go to work because of issues at work, and I'm standing there going, my God, why does she have to still go to work? Okay? And so I'm going to tell you this, that I believe that God, in His timing, is so ordering things that we're coming into a season where she's not going to have to work. Because of what He's shown me about what is coming down the pike. The Lord doesn't forget anything. And He knows the sacrifices that we make for Him and for His purposes. And Jesus said something very, very interesting when His disciples asked Him, Lord, we've given up everything. What are we going to get? They asked Him that. And you know what He said? He said, you're going to have houses, you're going to have land, you're going to have all kinds of stuff, plus the reward that you get in glory. I don't have the verse in front of me, but it's in there. Trust me, because I hold on to that. That what God is going to do is going to be so far beyond what we're even thinking or dreaming about. Okay? And so I share my story with you tonight because I believe that God, and we'll follow up with this more next week because I've got a bunch of scriptures that will help us understand the process of what it looks like to walk through becoming free from shame. How did I do it? How did I get free from this thing? You know, and again, there's still times where I'm like, oh my God, you know, it hits you again, and you've got to go through and remind yourself of what the reality is, right? But I feel like the Lord, at this point, in having us talk about this and having us share this, wants simply for us to take our relational skills and our commitment, our connection to one another to a whole nother level. And so I'm asking each of you that you got, you know, we're all family here. Let the Lord show you where you need to think about becoming more vulnerable, more open, more authentic in your story, your situation, so that we can be there for each other in whatever that is. Does that make sense? So, Father, I thank you that that's your heart for us, Lord. You are absolutely so intentional right now about having us be freed from whatever shame issues are still within us, Lord, where we see ourselves in a wrong way, where we believe about ourselves in the wrong way, where we don't think that we're worthy of what you say you want for us. So I ask you for that, Lord. I ask you that you will help us in this season to go even further than where we've been in our relationship with each other as brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of you. Father, thank you. Thank you for this grace that's on us. In Jesus' name, amen.